finally, a source of raw, real, and honest information on healthcare issues that matter most. Welcome to BS Free MD. From the latest medical information to how to stay sane as a doctor or a patient, no subject is taboo, no BS is allowed. Now, let's welcome your hosts, Doctors May and Tim Hindmarsh.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of BS Free MD, where your hosts, Tim and May Hindmarsh, talk about hot topics and all things in medicine, health, and business, and all the ins and outs of healthcare and some politics too. And today's episode is really actually helpful, although the title might scare you off. It's Unraveling the Mystery of a Medical Bill and how to decipher what that is, why there's certain charges, what to pay and what not to pay. And it applies actually on both the consumer, the patient side, as well as to the physician side. And we have a great guest here with us to help unravel all that for you. Her name is Sandy Kibling. She's an insider in the healthcare industries, worked with insurance companies as well as in physician offices. So Sandy does a great job, and we have a fun conversation, just giving tips, tricks, and pearls on how to decipher that.
Yes. Excellent. Super important. We ignore, all of us, I think to some degree, ignore how we are billed in healthcare, but we do so at our own peril. And she has some really good tips. Definitely there's stuff that you're going to hear in this episode where you can save some money, whether it's on prescription drugs or whether it's on just how to read your bill and make sure that things were done correctly. Because what did she say? Was it 4 out of 5 or 3 out of 5 medical bills have errors? Wow, that's comforting, isn't it, kids? Especially
maybe then
when
watching a DocTales while they've been
apparently
filling those in.
Especially when it's 20% of the U.S. economy.
Yeah.
So, wow, that's exciting. So tons of really good information. She does a great job of being able to communicate it. So
stick around for this interview.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of BS Free MD. This week, we have a special guest with us on the inside of the medical billing, let's just say. And
health insurance world.
Sandy Kibling is our guest, and she's a healthcare professional, having served in numerous roles, including physician consulting and working for a large healthcare insurance company. She's worked on the front line addressing physician and subscriber issues, and has heard the firsthand the frustration and concern about affordability and navigating a complicated healthcare system. Sandy's passion is to create a trusted source with Get Savvy, Demystifying Healthcare, a podcast that breaks down the complexity of healthcare and empowers consumers to navigate the healthcare system. I love it. So today, welcome, Sandy. We want to get in deep and talk to the point of how to unravel the mystery of a medical bill. And even for us doctors, when we get a bill, sometimes I'm confused on there. So this is going to be great. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here. It's a fun topic to talk about.
Let's make it fun, because I'm sure people are thinking, ick, the medical bill. But
yeah, but you do it. You don't pay attention to this at your own peril.
Yeah.
I mean, it really, this stuff is super important. And, May and I were discussing this morning, and I said, most physicians have no clue how they get paid. They sign a contract with a gigantic multi-hospital or a multi-clinic entity. Their employees, it's like, we're going to pay you X amount per, work unit or per hour or whatever the case is. And then they see patients and the money shows up and they merrily go along. They don't understand that all of this is based on gajillions of different contracts with different insurance companies, with the federal government, with the state government. Somebody had to negotiate those. Well, somebody has to produce the bills and send them out to the patients that you saw. It's really quite complicated. And if we don't know how we get paid, I guarantee you most people out there just consuming healthcare have zero concept of how this works. And that's unfortunate, because it's really important.
It is important. And just to give you some staggering statistics, they say that 4 out of 5 bills contain errors that could result in inflated medical charges. And I will say firsthand, when I worked at a large health insurance company, I was the director of the provider experience or provider relations team. And I can tell you 80% of the time that my team spent was either troubleshooting a bill or issue with a provider's office, either that they were having or on behalf of a patient or a patient calling in. And when I was working at the insurance company, it was such a problem. I remember heading over to the next building where the claims team was at, and I went over there to just have a talk or better understand, because I just couldn't have my team absorb all of that. And I kid you not, the lack of accountability that I saw firsthand having worked there was, I got off the elevator and I heard snoring. I can't even make that up. And somebody was actually sleeping at their desk, not processing or reprocessing the claim or addressing the issue. And others were sitting around looking at the bills or troubleshooting them while watching episodes of The Bachelorette. So we wonder why there's five, four, um, four out of five bills contain errors, because I'm not saying there's not good people working at health insurance companies, but I've seen that a lot. And in my other role as a physician consultant, where I negotiate those contracts, I struggle with dealing with, the number one issue is dealing with claims issues. So it's just a big struggle out there, and it's no wonder that they don't always get it right. And I think as a patient, just really understanding what are the things that you need to look for becomes so essential. Otherwise, you're going to overpay likely.
So let's get to that.
Mhm.
I would really want to get into the understanding the bill and then the EOB. And honestly, for a long time, I didn't even. But we moved to the U.S. I'm like, EOB. What the heck is this? I mean, people, I think, now look at it and understand that if they have insurance, it's explaining what's covered, what's not. But what are your tips, points, things to watch for between a bill? And some people don't even look at the bill because they look at that insurance EOB explanation of benefits and think, oh, they got it covered. I won't even look at it. So what do you recommend?
Well, so yes, it's a good point to explain. As you said, the explanation of benefits is not a bill. It's just going to explain the charges that you still owe or may have already paid, maybe your copay at the time that you got that service. It's also going to know maybe if you have any additional money that maybe the insurance company didn't cover. A good example of that is if you went to your optometrist for your annual exam and you get that refraction test where you look at the different lenses and they say good, bad. Typical insurance companies will pay for that. So it'll note on there that that needs to be paid. Once that's all done, then if there's any money owed, they'll typically send that EOB back to the provider's office, who will then send you an updated bill. So what I say, so it's not a bill, but you want to make sure that your insurance company got it right. You want to make sure your provider got it right, because the provider's office is going to send it to your insurance company. Your insurance company is going to send that EOB. You're going to want to make sure that's right, and then an updated version will be sent to your provider's office, where they will send you that final bill. So when you look at that EOB, I think there are really six key points. I'm just going to look at my notes and make sure that we have it. And it's going to vary because every insurance company, of course, has a different format for an explanation of benefit. But I think some of the key things, number one, is making sure that incidentals like the dates, the name, your insurance plan was done correctly. Say you have a PPO plan and they put HMO. I mean, that's going to be a difference in what you're going to pay. So just giving it at that top level, making sure that they got your information right. I think looking at the provider responsibility amount is another section. It actually breaks down the payment information. So you'll see how much the provider actually charged, and followed by any adjustments that per the contract with your insurance company, which results in that allowed amount. And so that's really an important point. I know we'll probably talk about this later, but people often get that patient estimate from the provider's office and they're like, holy cow, this is like $5,000. But the allowed amount, it may be $2,000. So, and you may say, well, is my provider office trying to pull one over on me because they're charging so much? But they have to charge a little bit higher based on their contracts, but they can only accept the allowable. And in fact, there's contract language in there that protects the patient, whereby the provider can only accept the rate that is allowed. So I know that's a lot, but it's important to kind of look at that breakdown and always know that even though the provider responsibility is more, it's not always going to be the amount that you owe.
So, right. So basically, if you have an operation and the surgeon says they want $5,000 for this surgery and they submit it to your insurance, and the insurance company says, no, we only allow $3,000 for that surgery, then the other $2,000 cannot come to you in a bill, correct?
Correct. And if it does, that's where it's so important. You're exactly right that you have rights to appeal that and know. I mean, honestly, if a provider's doing that, I mean, they're in breach of their contract and there are serious repercussions from that. So, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
It's good.
Yeah, insurance fraud does not end well.
Well, a lot of people don't know that, though. They don't know that. They think, oh, the insurance would only pay this amount to the doctor. Therefore, I have to owe the rest that they requested. And people don't understand that they can't do that.
That, and I think it's so important to understand it. And sorry, I drive this point home, but I'm reminded when I was in a doctor's office for my own appointment, and I was just rescheduling. It was a very small office, and this guy came in, and he had his patient estimate, he had his EOB, and I mean, this guy drove into the office. He didn't call in, but he was so confused by, okay, if you're charging me this. And I know I have this coverage. Do I owe that other amount? And he just couldn't get an answer that he could understand, because I think the billing person was just talking 90 miles a minute and a million acronyms. But he was really a struggle for them. So I think it's important for patients to know when they get that bill, trust but verify and know your rights.
Right. Okay. So keep going with your points.
Excuse me. Sorry. The next thing I'd look at is a patient non-covered amount. And I kind of talked about this earlier because there are things that aren't going to be covered by your insurance company. I think the example I mentioned earlier was the refraction test that you get done at optometry visit. It may not be covered. And of course, if that's not the case, then you'll have to pay that amount, but you want to make sure that could be an error too. They're like, oh, I'm so sorry, we do cover that. So always make sure. I know I called into the insurance company because I didn't know. And I'm like, why don't you guys pay for this? I think I called my provider's office and they said, oh, insurance company never covers the refraction test. And I'm like, well, why not? She said they just don't. So I'm like, okay, well now, now I know. Always good to look at your co-insurance amount. And again, that's going to be whatever amount the insurance company is paying on your behalf. So if that's 80%, say you have an 80% plan, making sure that they covered that amount and they got that right. And then the amount you owe, and that's really the most important part. So when you get a bill from the provider, the amount that you're being charged should match that number. So, and I think it's a key point. I think I mentioned it that before, but that the explanation of benefits is not a bill. That final bill will come later from the provider's office. But remember, insurance companies process a lot of claims. And if you've ever been at an insurance company, there's a lot of things on their desk and they could easily confuse you with another patient. It happens all the time. And then finally, 6 is the patient benefit summary. I think just really that summary section. You may see any additional notes about how your claim was processed, or they may have a number at the bottom that says E94, why they deny that code. And if you disagree with it or you want to question it, I think it's smart to either call your provider's office or call your insurance company to see if you can understand why that is. And again, it could very well be an error that they need to adjust.
No, those are great points. And just, a starting point for all of this, it gets very confusing and every insurance is different. And back to that refraction thing, people often will have vision coverage, which is different than medical coverage. And sometimes they don't work hand in hand. And
Nope.
I had an example where I have a medical condition requiring me to get certain tests at my eye doctor's office. And it was weird because I couldn't even figure out as the doctor. So I'm like, I'm referred to the eye doctor, and they did my refraction test, which was covered by my vision plan yearly. But then I had to have a medical evaluation of my eyes because I have a medical condition affecting my eyes. So that had to then that got denied. It was all a billing error because they tried to put it through on the vision side. So then they had to run that part through on my medical. So I have two things going on. Some of it has to go through the vision plan, some had to go through the medical plan, and then it got really weird where it was like if you were being seen for both at the same time, then I couldn't pay, they would only pay for one or the other, and it was nuts. So it took me calling the eye doctor's office to really, they were the best at trying to run all the bills down both directions. And then it came down to, sorry, it's going to be either or. And I'm like, this is crazy. This is nuts. It doesn't make sense. But so really, to your point, research it, verify it, call your insurance, but also the doctor's office, and really try to sort through it to make sure that you're getting as much as covered as you can and correctly, because it can be confusing even for us medical professionals.
You bring up a good point, because dentists fall in that category too. If it's medical versus dental, then
Yes.
they have to bill, like you're getting a jaw surgery or something. So that becomes a real issue. And I will tell you, they struggle. I remember just, how do you want me to bill? And part of it's what their lack of knowledge. But I would also add that every health insurance company has different claim systems and different requirements for how the claim should be processed. An example I like to use is if a child is getting tubes in their ears, one insurance company may say, oh, bill bilateral. So you just bill that on one line. But another insurance company will say, oh, you need to put that on two lines, left ear on one line, right ear on another. And they have to do it differently for every insurance company. I know that's a little bit of minutia, but those are just some of the challenges that a provider office deals with, because they can't get a straight answer from the insurance company. And it could result in a provider's office having to write off money, or a patient having to pay that additional charge when really their insurance should cover it.
And then here's another
I think I know where you're going.
thing that, well, maybe not, but a lot of people will have double coverage on their medical benefits. And so how does that work? Can you explain the complications? I mean, if your primary insurance is listed as one thing, do you have to wait for all that to run through the primary insurance to see what they're going to pay, and then they decide to roll that over into the secondary insurance? And how long can that take for somebody to have to wait till all that gets sorted out? And we currently don't have that. At one point I did a long time ago, but we haven't had to navigate that. But is there any tips or tricks to that if you are double covered?
Cool. First, I want to say I'm not crying, although I probably should be with the medical bill. But
Yeah. I know, right? No.
it brings me to tears.
Right. Blame it on your allergies.
I know. I'm having a coughing attack of all time.
It's all right.
It does make it more complicated. I use the example of my father-in-law. So he is a Medicare primary, and then we have a Humana Medicare Advantage for him as a secondary. And you're right, it has to run through Medicare first. So whoever your primary is, it runs through there first. And then once anything is not covered by Medicare, then it runs through, in our case, we have Humana Medicare Advantage. It runs through there. And then once that's done, the third layer is, and then you get your bill for what you may owe. And so it does take a longer time, but the battle we often have is, wait a minute, I shouldn't owe that, or somebody missed that line in Medicare that should have been covered, or it was not a generic medication, but it was a brand name, so nobody's going to cover it. And then Medicare fights with Humana, and it can be a pain. But I think, it's generally, I hear so many people say, I just can't be bothered with this. But like I said, you need to just follow the process and be patient and take good notes. And when I say good notes, when you're calling into that representative to say, hey, this didn't get processed correctly with Medicare, or I think this should have been processed differently, and just take notes and fight the good fight. Because unfortunately with double insurance, it can be more challenging, as you can imagine.
The thing that always drove me completely insane was not getting an itemized bill. And I'm like, how in the name of common sense? I actually went to the CFO of a company I used to work for. I was on their parent board, so I had access to him. And I took our 3 or 4 pages of bills, and I said, tell me what this is for. It says surgical services or hospital, whatever, or it doesn't say anything about how you generated this. It's just this amorphous service and a number attached. I said, if I took my car into my local mechanic who owns his business, who has 0 employees, and he didn't have an itemized statement, I would not pay him. He goes, well, it's the standard in the industry that we don't itemize anything. And I'm like, and you wonder why it's expensive. Like, because you can't, people need to see the $12 Tylenols and all of these other things if we want stuff to change.
Yeah, absolutely we do. And I think you can, I always say it depends on the provider's office because either they're using a third party biller, either in the States or offshore. Or, and I've seen some small practices have, a Susie Jones who's remote doing the billing for them. But and sometimes they get overwhelmed. But I think you have consumer, you have every right to ask for that itemized bill. I would even, and when I do some of my talks, I talk about understanding what a CPT code, or current procedure terminology code, which is a 5-digit code that we all use to bill a service for an office visit. I mean, you guys know this, a vaccine or whatever it is. It's like a plumber's invoice, but asked specifically by CPT code, I want to know what services were provided, and they should give that to you. I'm not saying it's not an uphill battle, but they should give that to you so you can trust but verify.
Usually it's an issue with the hospital or surgical center billing, where there's so many things like from IV bags to Tylenol to supplies and meds that don't get listed. It just says general services. Well,
Yeah, and
what does that mean? And so physician offices, I haven't seen it myself
no,
personally
it's
as much.
hospital.
It's usually hospital bills where they can kind of just lump everything together, and then you don't know really what you're paying for. So that's a whole different ballgame.
Well, it is a whole different. I will say though, I am seeing it get better. My father-in-law, as I mentioned, is in a large healthcare system here in Colorado, and I have to say, I was actually amazed. I went into the portal because I was curious as to what services were done, and it was really pretty good. I think it was the Epic system, but it was really pretty good about itemizing everything in detail. But it is often that they'll just put general services on there, and that's why I think it's important to try to get that information. But I hope that with the new transparency laws that are out there, that are required of both health insurance companies and in this case hospitals, that they are seem to be towing the line a little bit better because they know they're being held accountable. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I hope that changes it so people can get the information they need.
So do
Yeah.
we still have the price transparency law? Because I thought that was a leftover Trump, whatever it was, declaration or whatever it was, and that was thrown out because that is the fact that you can't just call up a hospital system and say how much does it cost to have a baby here, and then call up the next one and get the answer. It's staggering to me. I heard a report from a surgeon who's a big advocate in this whole world, and he was talking about the difference between Mass General and Brigham and Women's, and one vaginal, uncomplicated vaginal delivery was like 11 or 12,000. At the other, it was like 25 or 30, and they're both in the Harvard Medical School system. Both hospitals are in the same system, and they were one was charging double what the other did. And then they ask, why is that? And it's like, well, we have to fund costs. So we lose money at one place, and then we get, so we have to make it where we can. And it's kind of like going to Boeing and saying, well, we have to charge more for the fuselage because we're losing money on the wings.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's
really?
crazy. I remember when I was looking at my father-in-law's portal, the reason why I was looking at his services that he had done at a hospital, a basic, comprehensive blood test was like, I don't know, maybe $7 in a provider, typical clinic, urgent care. You guys know better, than a comprehensive metabolic panel, I think.
Mm.
And at the hospital, it was like $77. So it was just, I was what you would charge in an office versus a hospital setting. But to your question about the transparency, there definitely is some laws still in place. I don't know if that was an extra version that Trump was trying to add, but I do know that those laws are in place. The question is the accountability and who's doing the checks and balances on that. That's
Right.
what I've been told is the real issue. But I've seen groups really step up. In fact, I would throw out a great tool. I was looking at it this morning in preparation of this interview, and it's called Turquoise Health. Have you guys heard of that?
Mm-mm.
No.
It's really a cool tool to what you can do is, let's say you put in your zip code and you put in I don't know, a knee surgery, whatever that code is off the top. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it will actually bring up all the facilities that and what they're charging for that price. So it's really
Wow.
kind of cool to it's called a transparency to super cool. You can actually search by insurance company and by product because if you have Anthem PPO and Anthem HMO, that facility or hospital or even doctor's office may not get paid the same rate, but it allows for you to search on that as well to get that data. So it's really a cool tool. It's free. It's really, I mean, it's evolving. I've seen it. I think I looked at it 6 months ago and I'm like, hey, this is great. And I looked at it today and I'm like, wow, there's a lot more data there that may help people kind of troubleshoot.
That's awesome. Turquoise Health, is
Mhm.
it though, like turquoisehealth.com? I'll link that. It reminds me of the Good RX type thing that for people, it's a coupon system where if you don't have money to pay for a prescription, or even if you do and it might be cheaper, you can type in Good RX and it will give you the prices in all the nearby pharmacies for what the cost of that prescription will be. And it's really a fun and
Yeah,
helpful tool for
they,
people because sometimes even with your copay it might be cheaper for you to just pay cash with the coupon. So if we have people look it up all the time on
yeah,
GoodRx.
they have been successful, very successful.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It reminds me of, I'd have patients where, back 20 years ago when Walmart and then very closely after Walgreens started providing the $5 prescriptions, which was fantastic, especially in a more impoverished area like where we live. And I tell them, I said, don't run. I'm running a prescription, just pay for it. Yeah, but I have insurance. I said, yeah, but your copay for this prescription is going to be $15. And if you just pay for it, it's going to be $5. Yeah, but I have insurance. And I'm like, okay,
and you
and
say,
it's,
okay, have a good day, bye.
I mean, but it's weird. It's because it's almost like, you know, there's this I think, but I think it begs the point because there's this misunderstanding of what insurance is.
Right.
And truly what insurance is, like car, if you look at it from the insurance industry, so car insurance, house insurance, business insurance for your business, liability coverage for, if you're a practicing physician or lawyer or whatever. It's a way to financially protect yourself from a financial risk that you cannot bear. That's what it is. It's not a free for all. It's not a way to get your car painted for free. It's a way to recover your car if it gets stolen or massively damaged, or God forbid you hurt somebody else. But yet in health insurance, it's become kind of prepaid health care. And it's like, if I'm not using my insurance, I'm getting ripped off. Well, if it was real insurance, you want to never use it. You never want the financial catastrophe,
Yep.
no matter what. But in health insurance, it's like, well, I paid off my deductible. I'm going to go to the doctor as much as I can because now it's free. Well, it's not.
Yeah, that's true.
No.
So many people don't understand that. And I would add to that, we talk about preventative care and, if the plan's purchased off of the exchange, I mean, you have the Accountable Affordable Care Act rights and where you can get a lot of preventative stuff, which I think is not a luxury item. I think staying on top of that preventative, getting your blood pressure checked, getting those screenings done
Sure.
are really important so that you're not just waiting for something to happen. So, but people that have insurance don't often take advantage of those screenings that are also important to do. So it's important to know, not abuse it, but certainly know what to do in terms of preventative as well.
Right. If it's there for you, please make use of it and don't neglect it.
Right. And where there's been some confusion, in the preventative care is the Welcome to Medicare exam and the annual Medicare wellness exam, which drives patients completely nuts because they think they're getting their annual physical. They're not. They're getting an interview, which actually can be quite productive because a lot of the questions that are essentially mandated are really quite good. But it's essentially an interview. You sit down and you talk to the doctor for, 30 minutes and they ask some questions and that's it. If you get labs or an exam, it's actually extra. And patients do not understand that. And it's unfortunate because I think, as much as I don't like a lot of the mandated healthcare, I think it's a reasonably good tool because at least it gets patients in their later years in to discuss prevention and discuss fall prevention and all these things that are really powerful. But it's not an annual physical. That's really important to understand.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's really a key point. Hey, going back, if you don't mind, on the prescription costs, because this all goes to something to think about in your bill as well. We talk about GoodRx, which is good as well, but also I think, do you guys use? Because I know you still practice some. Is that cost plus drug? Have you guys been using that at all, or in the
Mm-mm.
clinic?
No.
Okay. So cost plus drug, one of I've actually I did a podcast on it because I really appreciate what Mark Cuban, um, owns Dallas Mavericks, has billions of dollars to support this. But I can appreciate that he's out there trying to put a boot in the backside of the pharmaceutical industry. But in a nutshell, make sure that people can get access to prescription drugs more affordably. And so I researched it because I was curious as to how it worked. And I use some eye drops for my eyes that are literally $75 for a small bottle a month, right? You're using those drops twice a day. And, for someone who has a lot of prescriptions, or, I mean, it just adds up over time. And so if I looked on the site, went through it, and I could actually get that bottle for $16 at manufacturer's price. So I find that to be really cool. And I know he's expanding and working with pharmacies now and other things as well. But I was just curious because it does have forms on there for providers' offices to use to prescribe medication that way, so that people can get that at a discounted rate. So I just didn't know.
No, that's really helpful. I'll link that for sure. That I was unaware of. I do know, just because of what we've done with patients in the past, but also personally, that a lot of times, and this is speaking to our audience out there, that if you are on a prescription medication and you go to get it, even if you have insurance, and they say, well, it's going to cost you, $150 or $200, even with insurance, and you like gack at the cost. If you check a lot of times on that website of that drug manufacturer, you will often find that you can sign up for free coverage for a month or 3 months or even a year. All you do is you go in there and you put in your information, and it's like, yes, I'm taking um, drug X, and you put your info in, and they will give you like a coupon card sometimes with a code, and you just take that into your pharmacy in addition to your insurance, and then lo and behold, if you're like, wow, now I don't have to pay for that, or it's partially covered, or the price is reduced. And so check the website of the drug you're taking as well, because for a lot of newer medications that are really expensive, you'll be surprised. And so I always knew that as a doc, and it's becoming a more of a thing, but people don't know that. They would never think, oh, I could just go on the drug website, because to your point with my eye drops, because I also have some, their website, and my eye doctor, I have a new one. The old one told me about it, the new one forgot about it, and I forgot until I went to pick it up and went, oh yeah, these are really expensive, but I should have went on their website and signed up for this calendar year. And then I did, and the cost was zero to me. So check the website of the drug you're getting, because they often have a program as well.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, either that I've gotten Alvesco inhaler for a coupon, $5 instead of 375. But I love what you said about that, because I know some people can, and I get it. I mean, people have busy lives, and so, but to really check that side, I haven't apparently a little issue with my left eye, but all's well. But yeah, the drug, you're absolutely right. The drug, I think, was probably like $3,000, and my copay would have been close to 1,000, but I got a card for a year, and they basically offset my entire copay for that. And I
Yeah,
wouldn't have known. And I found out about it because people were like, well, how the heck was I supposed to know? Right. And I think that's where being your own advocate, and I say this all the time, ask the financial office, say, hey, I'm struggling. What recommendations do they have? And they gave me three options. So, and the manufacturer one actually was the one that worked. Or, I think you can go to the state agencies too on your site, that your for per your state, and there's different options. Community centers in Colorado, we have Colorado Consumer Institute that helps direct people, because there may be things out there you just didn't even know that could be a source. So I always say, do a little research, but don't go without care.
exactly. Yeah, and I honestly, to thinking back on that, I remember, was it the first time I called and said, there's no, called back to the physician's office, and I said, this is great, but there is no way even on my income, salary, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to pay for this. It's important to me, but I don't want to pay this prohibitive price. And so they tried to switch it to another generic or other medication. And they didn't even tell me about, oh, you can go on the website and look it up, until I talked to someone else. And then anyway, I got it sorted out. Said, give me the initial prescription, please, and I'll get it covered by going to that drug website. And I said, oh, you need to tell people. Oh, good point. So I was educating them that people could get it, and whether they forgot about it, or, doctors get busy. Sometimes they forget to tell their patients that this is a way to get the coupon, or so look it up and check around.
Well, right. And then from the provider perspective, what often happens is we write the prescription assuming that they're taking it, and they go to get it and it's too expensive and they don't tell us and they just don't take it.
Yeah.
You see them 3 months later and you're like, how come, your whatever hasn't changed, or your blood pressure hasn't come down, or, take your pick. And it's, well, I haven't taken it. Well, why not? Well, because it was however much. And I'm like, well, that would have been nice to know.
Yeah.
And assuming, I mean, from a consumer perspective, assuming your doctor understands billing is a massive assumption, because most don't, unless you own a private clinic and you actually negotiate those contracts yourself and understand what it takes to submit those bills. I think hardly any doctors really understand that.
Yeah.
I want to keep going a little bit. We were talking about understanding the bill. Can we just do a bit more on the charges versus the allowables here, and how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So, our definition, so a charge is really the price the provider submits to the insurance company, and the allowable is what the provider is allowed to accept for payment. And so this is all defined in the provider's contract with, let's just say, Cigna. And so they negotiate those terms. So the provider may submit for, let's just say, a 20-minute visit, I'll just use easy numbers, a price of $200. But the insurance company will only allow $150. So again, going back to that whole scenario, they can't go back and charge you that amount, that additional remaining amount of that additional $50, I should say. But then that kind of begs the question, why does the provider charge more anyway? It just causes confusion on a patient estimate versus that explanation of benefit that I get. I don't need any more confusion, right? But every insurance company pays different. So when I talk about the charge, every provider's office typically maintains a charge master. So they're going to have that 5-digit CPT code that I mentioned. If they for every service they provide, they're going to have a price for that. And the reason why and usually that price, how they come to that price is based on, they look at all of their insurances and what they've negotiated in the four corners of their contract. And they say, okay, well, United pays the highest for that visit at, $200. So they should make sure that their charge master is 25% above the highest paying insurance company. And the reason I know this sounds crazy, but the reason to do that is because prices adjust every year based on the fee schedule. And if they are charging less money, then the insurance companies aren't going to come back and say, oh gosh, I'm so sorry, you underbilled us. So they build in that buffer on the estimate. So it's not to overwhelm the patient or to feel like you're having one pulled over on you. It's how they can make sure they're paid per their health insurance contracts. And again, and then the allowable is based on, if Cigna says they're only going to pay $150 and United's going to pay $175, that's all that they can collect.
Have you heard of hyperbaric therapy?
If you want better circulation, oxygenation, or respiration,
Turn up the volume.
Everyone appreciates the increased energy and clarity.
Athletes, say goodbye to those PRs because you're going to blast
So
them.
how does it work?
We load your body with oxygen.
That means
Less inflammation,
fewer allergies,
faster healing, and more.
Come see us, 1200 Executive Parkway.
The Upside Down building.
Call us 541-636-3278.
That's 541-636-3278.
We have some incredible deals.
Heal, build, and thrive
With New Leaf Hyperbarics.
Got air?
There's two sides to this. One is the patient side, and one is the person doing the work, me, the doctor side. And so part of me as a consumer goes, even as a doctor, think, what other industry in the world does this? If I hire a plumber to come in,
Defense
fix my
contractors,
toilet,
Raytheon,
and the plumber comes to fix my toilet, and then he says, here's the bill for the $200 for all the parts and labor. And I say, well, I only really want to pay you. It's only worth $150 to me. That's all you're getting. I mean, I'm just thinking nowhere else in any that I can think of, I could be totally wrong, does the system work like this? And so people ask us that all the time. Well, how can the insurance companies decide what they're going to pay you? And then I say, well, then, if we don't like it, I guess we just don't see any patients with that insurance, which sometimes happens. Doctors refuse to cover or take patients with certain insurances. Lots of physicians stop dropping Medicare patients because they pay lower. For primary care, there's different things. And so then people say, well, why won't you see me? Why won't you take my insurance? And this is part of it, right? As far as the reimbursements and what they're paying or not paying. And but back to the whole point of, it just baffles my mind how insurance companies can decide what the physician's
Well, but
worth.
but they're not deciding. They're sort of deciding. See, this is the problem with third-party payment. This is where it comes from. If it was a direct consumer to producer model, which would be a true free market model, then what would happen is you would have the you get a service. This is what I'm charging for the service. Take it or leave it, and that would be that. But that's not how it works. The producer is negotiating with a payment entity, and then the payment entity isn't really negotiating with the person receiving the service. You just get your insurance because you get it at work, and then you wonder why it doesn't work and why it gets expensive, because all the costs are hidden. What makes things inexpensive is competition. What makes competition possible is price transparency, and we have zero price transparency. So you can't get true competition, and then you're making gazillions of dollars for the health insurance company to distribute your money for you. That's really what it is. And I mean, I think that if this is going to change, because yes, on its face, it seems insane, it's going to come from consumers going, why am I giving money to a multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporation to give me my money back for a service that's essential? I mean, I think that's where people have the baseline where people have to get to. They're like, what service are they really providing?
Yeah.
Not I have insurance
Well,
or I don't have
I
insurance.
guess Tim just answered that question for you, Sandy. So you got off the hook. But talking, yeah, it's okay.
No, that's fine. It happens.
But basically, the the reimbursements on different levels from insurance companies to medical offices, just people don't understand that, and so I think that's a really important point, is that them knowing how the prices are set. Now, who gets screwed is if you're paying cash, right? So if the doctor's price is set at, it's 25% above what the highest market pay is. So say someone has United and they pay 200, and someone has, pick another insurance company, and they only pay 150. If suddenly you're cash pay and you're suddenly without insurance, then you're going to get the $225 bill, correct?
No, that's a
No?
good point. And what they
Oh,
normally do is they have a either separate charge master for self-pay. So it's
ah,
really a good
good.
point. So they're going to make sure that they charge that a rate, and I would ask and make sure of that. And I would also, sometimes what they'll do with self-pay is even offer a discount because you're going to self-pay. So I would always ask, hey, I'm going to self-pay. I have a high deductible, or I don't have insurance. I want to make sure that you're not being charged that outrageous rate. And make sure it's a self-pay rate. And again, ask for a discount. Do you offer 10, 20% off? Every little bit helps at the end of the day.
But in
Good point.
self pay, you can't have a 225 mark for a 99213, let's say, and then you end up collecting 160 or 180 from the insurance companies and say, oh yeah, but by the way, if you pay cash, it's $20. I mean, you can't do that. Like you can't have your cash rate so exceptionally low unless you only take cash and completely pull yourself out of the insurance system.
Correct. Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's why I always say take a look at it. And What I liked about Turquoise Health, you can actually, again, most of our facilities are evolving to provider clinics, but again, you can look on there and say, hey, I've looked in the 20 different groups. They're charging 70 on average, $150, and you're charging me $250. This is outrageous. And so again, you can make that debate with the practice by having that knowledge, knowing kind of what that going rate is. I an example I'll use is that I'm actually fighting this case currently with a pathologist after a dental procedure, and you can always look at the Medicare fee schedule. It's anybody can go there; it's free. And I looked up a code for pathology report. I think it was an 88305, which would charge 100 or $75, but this provider charged me $320. I think is which is inflated. It's crazy, but I know I'm like, look, you're greatly inflating the amount. I get you need to make money, but that's crazy. But I think having that knowledge so you can, look at that bar and then also, have that argument if you feel like you're being overcharged.
So I have a question to that point, and I'll just say it. We've had different job changes recently, and we've been on and off insurance. Cobra, wow, that's a whole other thing.
They call it Cobra because it bites you in the ass.
Yeah, it's expensive. It's awful. You pay bigly. Anyway, but
Huge.
there's
You pay
been-
huge.
There's been time, so I'm seeing the bills come through, and I would see it on even the bill submitted EOBs in the past. But what can you explain for our listeners something like if you're having a procedure, and I don't know if you do this end of things, especially the surgical or hospital side, but say a surgeon has his fee for his part of the surgery. Say it's I'm going to just use $5,000 to do whatever surgery. And most have assistants now. Oftentimes those surgical assistant fees, often a PA, will be the same. It'll be another $5,000 charge for assistant or PA X. Below that, I would look at that because I've had a few surgeries in the last decade and say, how on earth is the assistant fee the exact same as the surgeon fee, and they're submitting it into insurance? And that makes no sense to me
I think that's fraud.
as a patient, but also as a physician. I'm like, the assistant is not worth the same as the
No, usually
surgeon.
they're 10 or 20%.
So,
what I understood.
why do you know why they submit on the same level? Obviously, is there some insurances that pay at that level, or can you any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can. I don't have the surgery scenario on that part. They should be, but you're right, Tim. They're typically as like a mid level was going to get paid 85% of that contracted rate, not 100%. So it should be a lesser rate. It shouldn't be the same. And there are certain rules around that. So that's being done. I would check in on that because that doesn't seem right. You're being double charged, and that just shouldn't happen. But in the office, there are rules where there are some cases. I mean, as you guys probably know, I think we talked about mid levels briefly one time, but they can bill the same rate as a physician if they, bill under their national provider identification number. And the rules often aren't followed on that, which can result in a higher bill, and that, of course, results to the cost that a patient would pay.
So hang on, back up here just 1 second. So if a nurse practitioner or physician assistant uses their MPI number, they can bill the same amount as a physician?
No, if they bill under the physician.
I see.
Yeah, they bill under the physician, they'll get the 100% rate. But there are rules that nurse practitioners and physician assistants have that where they can bill, where they should bill, and they only get paid 85% of that contracted amount.
Right, but it's great for the health it's spectacularly great for the healthcare, the hospital system or the clinic system, because they pay them 75%.
Mm-hmm.
Or what? I mean, generally it's about 75%. So then they're making 10% more for every mid-level provider they have compared to every physician they have.
Absolutely.
And then patients come in, and I mean, the market reflects this. Patients get very upset. They're like, I want to see a doctor, especially older patients. And it's like, why is it like this? And I'm like, really? Do you want me to go back to the end of World War II and explain to you the origins of health insurance?
Yeah.
Because trust me, I can do it, and you will never see me again because you'll never want to hear me talk about anything. No, I mean, and it is, and it is what it is. I mean, we can curse the daylight or light a candle, and I would much prefer to light a candle, but it's very strange how this stuff starts and where it ends, because where it starts is not at all like where it is now. Like back to this explanation of benefits. So what you have is, this is the charge for the procedure, $5,000. The maximum allowable that they can collect from the insurance company is $4,000. Your insurance covers $3,300. You owe $700. Am I correct in interpreting that?
Yeah, I'm following your math. Yeah.
So that's how the lines work. So you think of this and you go, okay, I think I'm above average intelligence, or at least average intelligence. Maybe I have an IQ of 102. So I've just skimped the top. And you look at that and you go, that is completely insane. Because how are you going to interpret this unless you consume a ton of healthcare or work in the insurance industry to understand, okay, there's this fictional charge that the doctor's asking for. There's the maximum allowable, which is contracted. There's the amount that the insurance company is contracted to pay the physician. And then there's the leftover that I pay. And then you think, if you're 79 years old and are, starting to dement, etc., like, you just give up. I mean,
No, not even dement. My dad, for instance, would get these bills in the mail from the physician's office, and it would say, and he wouldn't read the fine print, this
is not a bill.
no,
That's
it
what it
would
says on the
come,
bottom.
and he'd have
This
something
is
done,
not a bill.
and it would say, please wait for your insurance. But he sees this, and he likes to pay things on time, and he doesn't want bad credit, so he pays it. And then he gets obviously confused, and I have to explain, no, you have to wait till it goes through Medicare, and then your supplemental, and you'll probably have to pay nothing. But now he's, paid this thing. And yeah, it's a mess. Or people, want a partial pay, or they don't even know. Yeah, it's
The EOB is very confusing to a lot of people.
Mhm.
And just read on the bottom, this is not a bill. Okay, good. It's not a bill.
Yeah,
Very
it
important.
is. But that when I think about what I do, negotiating the contracts with the health insurance company, it's such a fragmented and broken system. And before I checked out with the aliens for a moment, I'm glad to be what
yeah.
happened there. But I just think that they make it so confusing. And when I think about a back office of a provider's office, I think recently I was working with an MD-DDS. So again, he's doing jaw surgeries and whatnot, and they don't want to ever contract with commercial payers because it's so complicated. But just getting a prior auth, I think it was a big fight for him with this one insurance company, because it's like, look, I can't do surgery if I don't do a consult first. And so he was, it's so labor intensive. Cigna does it one way, Kaiser does it another. And so it goes. So it's so incredibly confusing for them, which, if they don't get that authorization, then that could be is an out of network fee, and you're paying more money, when the truth is you had every right to have that surgery and it was authorized. But it's so maddening, the administrative burden that I think the health insurance put on the providers. I'm not justifying a wrong bill. I'm just saying our system is so complex that it makes it so difficult to make sure that bill is right, and why the error rate is truly so high.
Do you think, I don't know, maybe this is the tinfoil hat side of my brain, but I think it's intentionally complex, because I think if people really understood how this works, they would freak out. They would get pitchforks and torches, and all of a sudden everything would be 45% cheaper than it is now. Because when I talk to my friends in direct primary care, I mean, they can replace their income. They can make exactly the same what, any contracted physician would make. Their patients are happy. They're happy. They're seeing half the patients per day, compared to the guy down at the, hospital patient mill. And, there's some downsides. You do more call, but the call is all patients that you screen. You can, fire people whenever you want. You just have to not break the law. But you're out from under Medicare. You're out from under all of this contracting. You have way less staff because you don't have to have anybody chasing bills or doing, any of this stuff. and you see what healthcare really costs. So to basically have open season on a primary care doctor, most places in the United States, if you're of reasonable health and under 65, it's somewhere between 75 and 150 bucks a month. That's the market price. That's where the physician gets paid, the front office person gets paid, his medical assistant gets paid. 150 bucks a month, pretty much maximum. And you go, holy crap, what are we doing?
Mhm. Yeah. I have to go to my contracting side for just a minute because one of the things you said, and this is true as consumers, and I'm no different. I walk around with my Anthem PPO card in my wallet and I think I'm covered, I'm safe. They're working on my behalf for the greater good. And that's just BS at the end of the day. That absolutely is not happening. And I would give you just an example of that because it's not just to the consumer, but it's to the providers that are really trying to care for you. I'll use the example of just I was trying to negotiate a contract because truly, practices, you said earlier, they provider groups, and this isn't a condescending statement, but they don't like to look at their contracts with the insurance company. But yet, if we have a contract with a vendor, we're looking at that, or legal's looking at that every year. I deal with practices that don't look at their contracts since the day the doors opened 17 years ago. But when they do come forward and say, "Hey, I want to look at my contracts," because they're trying to keep the lights on, they're trying to maintain that independent practice so they can serve their patients. But when I go back to a health insurance company who you're paying your premium to, right? And I say, I'm looking to get an increase. So post COVID, inflation, supply chain, all that good stuff. They say, oh, well, I can't give an increase because we need to keep our premiums low for our subscribers. Well, I can assure you the premiums are only going up for you if you as a subscriber every year. But yet I think about the insurance company that they get their cost of living increase every year as an employee and they get their bonuses, and providers who are trying to care for you get absolutely nothing.
Yeah. No, I mean, but it's mission accomplished.
Yeah.
If you're a gigantic insurance company, you don't want independent practitioners. The worst thing in the world for them would be to have to go back 50 years where every doctor's office was an independent business with 4 or 5 docs. That's probably the most efficient way to see patients. Um, least cumbersome, but that's not what they want. They want to be able to go and it's all about covered lives, right? So they want to go into a gigantic system. They want to go into Amazon and where with millions literally of employees and insure them all to get the best deal for themselves, the most covered lives, and the least amount of risk. That's their job to do that. So why in the world would they want to contract with a little 2 or 3 doctor practice and pay us what it takes to keep the lights on? It doesn't make sense to them. So then physicians come out of medical school and they're like, why the hell am I going to do a private practice and run a business and work 3 times harder when I can go across the street to the gigantic hospital system and I get a guaranteed wage? Now, you mortgage your soul, but you're going to get a guaranteed wage and you're going to be able to pay off your $300,000 of student loan debt. That's how it works now. And again, you can curse the darkness or light a candle, but it's really important for physicians and for, consumers to understand this is why it works. This is why you might not get a doctor and you might get a mid-level. And trust me, I like mid-levels. I've worked with tons, and there's lots of them that I would send my family to before I'd send them to some of my physician colleagues. So it's not a knock on their profession, but it isn't necessarily what the market wants. And you as a patient are not negotiating with the insurance company. So you are in a position where you take it or leave it based on the benefits of the place you work for, which is terrible from a market perspective, because there's no feedback from the consumer to the market. And that makes things super duper expensive. That's just the way the world works.
Yeah. And it's a sad state of affairs. So, what I was thinking as you were saying that, I think that, I'm not bad mouthing, necessarily. I used to say this when I was at the insurance company. I think there are good people that are really trying to do well at the insurance companies. But what I find is that they are so inundated with bureaucracy, and there's just so little that they can do. So, where I'm going with that is that kind of just thinking back about not to be so comfortable with, I mean, be comfortable that you have insurance, of course, but know your rights, understand your plan, and don't be afraid to be an advocate if you see that something is wrong, because of everything that you mentioned and the complexity, the fragmentation. It's just a broken system. And so I think knowledge is so essential to be your own advocate, to better understand. I know it's not an exciting topic, billing at the end of the day, but not knowing truly can cost you not only money, but also not getting the care that you need. Kind of going back to your scenario. Well, what do you mean you didn't tell me you didn't take your medication? And maybe had you known that you would have had an opportunity to present options, or somebody in the office could have. But it's really a sad state.
Well, to both of your points and what Tim was talking about, it's really not market driven by the patient choosing. Even, and we probably don't have time to get into this, and I don't know how much you could even explain it, but I've never gotten a good answer, even by someone who was selling us, the last person that came in to explain what we were picking in the medical benefit side. So we get a health insurance through our new employer, and he was trying to explain HMO versus PPO. And some people struggle with that. I understand the difference, but then there's all these different tiers and plans, and I'm supposed to try to figure out in my head how much care I used last year, predict how much health insurance or how much medical care we're going to get this year, and then I'm supposed to figure out in my head, because they all have different co-pays and co-insurance, and that's something else to try to figure out, your co-pay versus your co-insurance versus then you reach your maximum per year deductible, and then figure out, it's so hard for the person, the consumer, even if you have options and you're trying to make wise choices to get the maximum for your money. When you have insurance, like, I couldn't figure out, well, the PPO would make more sense versus the HMO, because I couldn't even do the math. And I tried to get them to do the math and kind of come up with a rough number of what I might be spending per year. And it was like, well, I can't. And so that's me, the doctor, and as the patient, even having a good money trail. I kept all my receipts and knowing how much I spent on care and trying to figure out the math on selecting a good program, because it's so complex, because it depends on what the doc bills, and it depends on your co-insurance and all these factors and deductibles, that it's very hard
It
to
is.
figure
I
out.
wish I had an easy answer to that. I always say, and it sounds like you've already done it, but almost like getting that spreadsheet out and really, because it does go to your billing, it does go to what you're going to pay. And I think, your itemized list of what whether it's just ongoing medications or an elective surgery, and just knowing, do I choose that plan that has a lower, that's going to cover more at a facility, because I know I'm going to have knee surgery this year. But it's really sitting down, and some things you obviously can't predict, and it's also seasoning that in with your risk aversion. Just how do I want that high
Right.
deductible? Do I not? Do I want an HSA plan to cover those things that are out of network? And so it is very complicated. But I know if you buy on the exchange, they're supposed to have, and I don't know how helpful they are, I've not used them, but a broker that's going to really sit down and break down, supposedly in simple terms, that you can. I mean, I think that was part of the Affordable Care Act, that you have an advocate that can help walk you through that plan. And I don't know if that's, when you said they helping you understand, if that's something that you leverage, but I know that that's supposed to be an option. But
Yeah, well, I think that broker did a terrible job if that's what they were doing. But you almost need an accountant. That's what actually jokingly and probably flippantly said to him. I'm like, it's almost like I need an accountant to break this down for me to figure out what's best, because it takes a lot of work, and most people aren't that savvy to be able to crunch numbers and figure that out, or no. So
Well, plus if you're a normal person, you don't use this very often. I mean, you might
you're
go to
calling me abnormal.
yeah, clearly. You might go to the doctor 2 or 3 times a year, maybe. I mean, if you're a 40-year-old healthy male, you probably haven't gone to the doctor since you were circumcised. And so, it's just, it's, you get the bill and you're like, I got insurance. Oh, okay. Oh, $300. Okay, done. And then it's out of your mind. Now, you could have just got burned for $300, but it happens infrequently enough for a lot of people that it's just easy to dismiss it. I mean, it's kind of, I mean, it's so complicated. It's kind of like solving a Rubik's Cube whilst skydiving, There's a lot of stuff going on, and it's happening fast. And it's like, yeah, I'm just going to drop the Rubik's Cube and open the parachute.
Yeah. There are a couple things I would say, because I know this is, like I said, it's not an exciting topic, but it's a needed topic. And I think, because people think, how am I going to get over, call United and end up offshore talking to someone who doesn't understand, my bill, and people give up and just pay the bill all day long. But I think, like I said, hopefully the tips earlier on the EOB and better understanding a patient estimate will help. But I also think if you're already in that situation where there's debt, I think we talked about prior to recording, but there's, I think it's RIP Medical Debt, and they are an nonprofit organization. If you have that debt already, that you can go to that organization. And I don't know the process. Um, but that they will help buy your debt so that, and so that your credit is not damaged and all that good stuff. It may be something worth checking out. And I think if you can know that you can always negotiate your bill. And I often say that because if you think about if your bill's high, you can always say, hey, listen, I want to pay this, but I just can't afford that. What are my options? Whether it's a payment plan, whether it's a discount. Because if that facility, that hospital sells to a debt collection agency, they're going to lose a significant percentage. So why not work with you and to get the payment? So it's just, some of the things that you can do. I'd also add, if you're struggling and saying, gosh, I can't even, I don't even want to think about a bill, I'm just going to go without care, I would make mention that there are community centers. Again, you can go to your state, but there are community centers that offer low cost free care in some cases. I know I was recently listening on the news in Colorado, one of the community centers got a huge amount of money for mental health. And they can offer that care. So it's not like there's no options. If you're afraid of a bill, worried about going into debt, there could be options where you can get that screening, that blood test done to rule out anything that could be a bigger issue.
No, really good point. Because there are a lot of those. We've referred patients to them many times over the years, and believe it or not, there's a lot of resources out there. So where can people find you to help them with their medical bill? Or why don't you let people know what you're doing and where you're at on the web and social media sites?
Well, thank you. So Savvy Healthcare Consumer is my site. So, because I think that's my main site, but on there I have some blog posts and resources, but mainly I have my link to my Get Savvy Demystifying Healthcare, and I have that my podcast, and I have transcripts and resources on there. In fact, about the community center, cost plus drug, other things that I've mentioned that are short and sweet, hopefully that helps people get the information that they need. And I always put resources. I have a lot of great resources too. I think it's the gov.org, but you can actually put your own zip code in there and find a community center in your state. So savvyhealthcareconsumer.com is a great place to find me. And my podcast is listed on there as well.
I love it. We need more patient advocates and information out there inundating the place like yours. And so we will link all of those in our show notes and share that with everybody. It's so good.
Yeah, no, it's great. Like you said, it might not be the most sexy sounding topic. The aliens and UFOs are much more kind of whatever.
Hey,
but
if it's all about saving money.
But it is all. I mean, there are tons of really great information on how to be your own advocate and save some serious money. I mean, just even the cost plus drug thing is just like huge.
Yeah. And I think one last thing I'd say, and I also talk about healthcare disruptors, and that's technology and people and companies changing how knowledge is shared. Whether or not you shop at Walmart or not, but I love what they're doing in various states. I think more on the East Coast, but they're putting in clinics in their stores, and it has like a listing, like a flat rate. And it just says, come in for an exam, $45. But people shopping and are concerned about stuff that can get that done. So I think that there are a lot of companies and stuff that are coming out to offer alternative options for people. It's just staying informed. That's probably the last thing I would say. If you're listening to a podcast, you're at Jiffy Lube and you're like, oh, I'm going to listen to that true crime podcast. But taking a moment, I think, and listening to podcasts like yours can really save lives and save people money.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And I've said for a long time,
thank you.
Healthcare innovation is not going to come from the healthcare system. Mm-mm. That's like expecting Jabba the Hutt to not take Carrie Fisher as a slave. It's not going to happen. Jabba is happy eating what Jabba's eating. it's going to come from the outside. You're going to need Luke Skywalker and Han Solo to save the system. That's the only way it's going to work. So, and I agree. I mean, flat rate at Walmart, it's not like they haven't made billions of dollars doing that before. So, more power to them. I can't believe Amazon doesn't have Amazon RX. I'm sure that's coming.
Oh, wait.
That seems like
where
a
have you
no-brainer.
been? You have not been shopping enough on Amazon because it's coming.
It has to be.
Yes.
That is.
You're newsflash.
He's getting
Yes,
remarried.
yes.
He's got a super expensive trophy wife now. He needs to make some more money.
They have it coming.
So,
yes, Tim.
I think he should get married in space. That's what I do. I take my
Instead of Amazon Kindle, it's Amazon Cabinet, or I can't remember what it's
He
called.
they just started something. I think it's
Yes.
they partnered with one, and there's a pharmacy component too.
Yeah.
But I going back to when I was talking to my mom, I take care of her every Friday, and I'm telling her this stuff. Like I said, she just tells me, how am I supposed to know this? And I think just tuning in, there's so many great things happening. You're absolutely right. Outside of the healthcare system, really, people and companies that are just getting fed up and saying, we're going to do something different. And that's what it's going to take.
Outstanding.
Absolutely.
Thank you again, Sandy. This was amazing. I know our listeners are going to love it. And there's tons of pearls of great price in this one. So
awesome. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Enjoyed that a lot. Again, not the sexiest sounding topic, but really pertinent and really gets to the base of where people struggle. When people say that they hate the healthcare industry, it's not because they hate their doctor or they don't feel better or they whatever. It's two things. It's too expensive and the access sucks.
And it's complicated and confusing. And I'm putting a hand up in the air, even me, sometimes looking at the bill that comes to me and trying to figure out and comparing it to the EOB that comes in the mail. And why does this doctor want this much money for their assistant, etc.? So really helpful information. The links are great sites for you to tap into. And some of them, like the Turquoise Health that I hadn't known about, these are going to be great. So lots of good stuff that you can make use of. Most people have heard of GoodRx. If not, that's another great one.
Yeah, Cost Plus Drug.
Yeah.
RIP Medicare Debt. That's RIP. I think it means rest in peace Medicare debt. So I would call it burn in hell Medicare debt if it was my business, but that's it. Or medical debt. Rather.
Any other thoughts that you want to share?
Not particularly. I mean, check out her stuff. She has a lot of information on her website on ways to decipher this. Her podcast is great. She goes through a lot of these things in detail. And, it almost makes you wonder if there shouldn't be some GoodRx for bills.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, that would be a really interesting business to get into. It's like, I can't decipher my bill. And, maybe it could be some sort of subscription thing, or
maybe you can do that as a retirement job.
I don't know,
I'll
but
stick you on that, and you can be someone's.
No, how about I find a venture guy that wants to do it, and we just take a piece of the pie? Because I don't know anything about setting up anything, but it makes sense. If you have LegalZoom, which has revolutionized a lot of simple legal stuff, or there's tons of online legal services now. Why not do this? Because this is, kind of like TurboTax. You could do it like a TurboTax thing. You type it all in. There's an algorithm that looks at it, checks out.
Yeah, where it says, stop, don't pay anything yet. Just wait.
Right.
Red flag, amber flag, green.
I mean, I envision a business where you could just take a picture of your bills, upload it into the service, checkmybill.com, pay them $10. They build an algorithm that has the AI that goes through the bill. And then if they need to, they have a person that oversees it. I'm thinking,
yeah,
dude,
love it. So if any of you out there know of any other services that are offered that we haven't covered or mentioned,
yes,
and have any insight.
Why did I just give away a great business plan to the entire world?
Well, I'm shaking my head. Anyway, send us an email, send us a note. And also, speaking of emails, check out our newsletter, Truth Serum, that drops to you every Saturday. You have to subscribe to that to get it. Has other pearls in there and other fun stuff that we don't talk about on the podcasts. And so if you want to get exclusive information and hear all Tim's secrets,
maybe
that I give away silently without him knowing, sign up for that, go to our website, bsfreemd.com, and there will be a link there to sign up for the newsletter. And otherwise, we will see you on the podcast Wednesday live at Doctails with
live stream Doctails with Cocktails,
Yes.
6 o'clock Pacific on Wednesdays on YouTube and that other thing, Facebook, and 9 o'clock on the East Coast.
There you go. We'll see you guys next time.
It's no secret that medicine is a bit uptight. That's why Tim and I created BS Free MD, to mix things up a little and have fun in the process. Besides, we are having these exact same discussions all the time, so we thought we might as well invite everyone to the party. If you really like us, you can get plenty more and maybe see one of Tim's cool tattoos on our Instagram or Facebook pages at BS Free MD. See you next time.
While we try to keep BS Free MD as raw and real as possible, we can't be held responsible for any medical decisions or discussions had as a result of what you've heard on the show. We know, bummer. But the truth is, we really do care about your questions. So feel free to reach out to us by email at doc@bsfreemd.com.